Little thing, takes a bit of time, but actually that personal message is really important. There's little ways that people can do this. There is technology out there that will allow you to be more personal.
My name's Peter Sumpton, and this is the Marketing Study Lab podcast. A podcast for those that are thinking, have thought and are doing, or already have a marketing qualification. But there's a little bit of something for everyone, as we cover a whole host of marketing topics. I chat to some amazing guests, each one a superstar in their own niche. And if you have a burning marketing question already, or after this episode, get in touch, we'll chat it through. peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk, or find me on LinkedIn, the link is in the show notes. If you'd like to leave a review on iTunes, this will really help others find this podcast and spread the marketing word. Now let's get on with today's episode. Once we've met and spoken to our guest this week, I thought we'd take a look at a model that is relatively overlooked in my opinion, and that's the McKinsey's consumer decision journey, but more about that later. First, let's meet Ben M. Roberts. You can blame his parents for the use of the M, and I'm pretty sure he'll explain why when we start to chat with him. Ben is the head of marketing at Talkative, who provide software that allows embedded voice, video, chat, and co-browsing on websites. It's a really neat idea, so check them out. Ben will explain it far more eloquently than I ever could what they actually do. But Ben also hosts the Marketing Buzzword podcast. And this podcast breaks down common marketing buzzwords to help its listeners understand and implement them into their own marketing strategies. Before we get into all the tech and buzzwords, I must ask Ben. Oh, and by the way, I think this is my favourite ever intro question, by the way. What is your favourite bee? Honey, Bumble, or G's?
Ooh, well, the Bee Gees are pretty good. I mean, you can't argue with the Bee Gees. I think. Can I be a bit rogue here, Peter?
Go on.
I'm actually going to go with a carpenter bee.
Okay.
Yeah, these ones, they think, I love a honeybee, I've got a bit of a sweet tooth, everyone loves honey. But carpenter bee, they're just really, really cool. These are the ones that like burrow into wood and stuff and all the hard, so they're an absolute nuisance, but they're so cool. They're just these bees that just burrow in, and actually, like a little fact for everyone as well, which would make it really interesting as a little biology section, I guess, is the males don't have a stinger, so they're more annoying, but they can't actually sting you. It's the females that are the stingers.
Oh, that is my favourite bee from now on. Hands down. Hands down. If they could sing as well, I thought that was going to be the fact, but hands down, favourite bee.
I'm sure actually if you put some scientist somewhere has probably put like a little microphone next to their wings and made some sort of sound. There will be a crazy scientist out there somewhere that has done that. I have no doubt.
A bit like the Cat album that comes out every Christmas.
Oh God, yes, yeah. There are always there. It takes all sorts, and that's why we have such a diverse world.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive straight into this. What's the story that's brought you to this stage of your career as head of marketing at Talkative, but more importantly, host of the Marketing Buzzword podcast?
Whoa, right. So I guess I'm lucky. One of these lucky people. From the age of 16, I said I wanted to go into marketing, and I've just followed that through, and I've absolutely loved it. I guess I say I'm lucky because not many people have an idea of what they want to do from that age, and it happens to be something they loved, and it's gone right the way through. Well, when I was at 16, I set a goal that I want to be a CMO of a FTSE 250 by the time I'm 30. So got 4 years left on that. Well, I say 4 years. It's less than 4 years, but we're gonna go with 4 years. And all the way through that, I've made choices to work in different companies trying to do different things. So I started working in a health and safety company, learning about marketing as marketing manager. Then I went to work for a university, doing marketing there, learned how to be a tiny cog in a massive machine and see what that was like. Then I went to work for an e-commerce company, being sort of a really central piece of a really small team involved in loads of stuff. Then the next move after that was to head of marketing at an insurance company. Again, completely different animal. And I was trying to make a real go of trying to experience as many different industries as possible. Spend enough time that you can actually understand what it's about and what works, what doesn't work, but not too long that I'd actually become like I couldn't work in any other industry. Then after that, I took the move to a startup, which is where I am now as head of marketing at Talkative. And it's a startup. We've got like 12, 13 full-time people now, and it's actually taking that marketing strategy from the ground, building a team, and it's so exciting. And then the podcast I started not long before I joined the company, and I'd spent a lot of time when I was at these other companies trying to go to as many events and meetings. I spent time going to these BNI networking meetings, going to marketing conferences, listening to people like going on like HubSpot.com and learning what this inbound marketing thing was. And I started thinking, I was sat at a conference and I was going, "Ooh, this is Buzzwords." And I started almost playing bingo, writing down, because I take notes throughout conferences, and I wrote down, I looked back, I was like, there are so many buzzwords in there. I said, most of them I thought I knew what they meant, but there were so many, and I was like, there's a podcast in here somewhere or something, because people were talking about it. I was like, let's just do it. Let's just get it happening. I didn't do really any other research. I didn't plan it to a stage. I was like, okay, well, how do I set up a podcast? X, Y, Z. A month later, I started the podcast, and it sort of blew up so quickly from there. And I'm so thankful to the guests and the people who've listened and shared it, because it went absolutely beyond my wildest dreams. So we're at 75 episodes now, taking a short break to try and really work on my book. And we're actually back next week, actually, from the recording of this. So that'll be the week commencing wherever my calendar is. So not today, but week commencing the 21st of January. So yeah, back for season 2 then. So we're already at 75 episodes, which is crazy.
That's
and
cool.
That's the story so far. ...
That's a really cool story. I like the fact that you were so passionate at a young age, and it just followed right through. I think you're right. Not many people do have that, and not many people are fortunate to do that. So we'll come on to the podcast in a little bit, if you don't mind. I just want to take a step back and look at the elements that you cover as head of marketing at Talkative. So the main premise is providing more ways for businesses to communicate with customers, essentially. Yeah. Why is this an issue, and why are businesses failing to communicate with customers?
Yeah, I guess there's been a big push recently for people to have this more human, in inverted commas as a buzzword, more human marketing, have these more human connections. Now, this is where something that we've identified as companies. People are pushing down the chatbot route. Chatbots are amazing. They have a real use. But actually, when people are speaking to companies who have either high value, high touch point, highly personal, they want to be able to actually speak with someone. And that's a live chat, because actually the efficiency, so they can actually multitask at the same time. Actually, through the web calling and video calling, you can actually, the person you're live chatting to, you can essentially call and speak to that exact same person that you were just chatting to. The video calling gives it a much more personal service. So actually you can almost really invest in it. So you can see, people could show you the agents could show you the physical product, and really trying to bring almost that e-commerce, that retail, that showroom experience into the digital age. So you can almost actually have a much more meaningful conversation, because a chatbot is great, but also if you want that quick question, that quick answer, you want to just sign up something, bam, amazing. But if you want to have a proper conversation with someone, that's where the limited stuff of chatbots are. And we're finding there's been great success, especially in the large companies that really want to maintain that personal service. And that's where the issue was, because things started becoming less and less personal.
Yeah, you bang right in what you're saying there, and that personal relationship sort of brings me on to another question, because you talk about building a rapport almost that chatbots will never ever do, as much as we'd like to think that in 400 years they will do, but by then machines will have taken over and it won't necessarily matter what they do. But why do you think building a rapport or a personal relationship gives businesses an advantage?
I think there are a couple of ways you can cut this. So the personal relationship means actually from a fundamental basics of business, we can upsell them. We can actually sell them more stuff. We can actually provide them with better quality or a better service in terms of we can sell them a quality of good that maybe of a higher value. You can add on other bits that may be highly relevant to a customer. Now that as a fundamental basic, we want to sell more. We want to sell them more of a higher value. For another level, it's actually how do we get those people coming back? How do we get those people to spread the word about the company? How do we want people to remember us and actually come back in the future or tell their other friends? That's what the secondary about, and that's where we're coming in a modern world. We started doing this for a long time, and as we started becoming more digital, we started losing that, not necessarily because we didn't want it, but actually maybe there weren't always the tools and resources there. There wasn't a way to necessarily be able to web call someone or speak to someone through a website. That technology wasn't around. So that's the importance, because we lost by going online. We've lost that personal relationship. We've lost the incentives. Apart from a price-led incentive, this is a new incentive to help people come back, because price isn't everything, isn't the be all and end all. Actually, it's people do business with people, no matter whether it's B2B, B2C. That's the people are the crux of it. They're the ones making the buying decisions and not the chatbots.
And it's that fine balance really with efficiencies and giving that personal relationship or building that personal relationship with a person, like you say, person to person. It will always be. A business isn't going to buy from a business. It needs people. Which brings us nicely on to looking at the B2B environment. How do you personalize communications when we are talking about B2B?
There are some awesome ways. So I was actually at a conference called Marketed Live in Nottingham. When was it? In September, October. And again, there are apps out there which was amazing that they used an app called Bonjoro. And what that meant was everyone that bought a ticket, it notified the organisers, and they came back with a personalised video response to everyone who bought a ticket. Little thing, takes a bit of time, but actually that personal message is really important. There's little ways that people can do this. There is technology out there that will allow you to be more personal in terms of being able to enable video calling on a website as our example, because we were talking about the company. It just means that you can speak to someone. And actually, if someone's quite angry, someone's quite worked up, actually you're less inclined to shout at someone who you can see face to face than you are when you're a keyboard warrior, when you're a faceless entity. Now, actually, as a business, it's like, I don't know if people want to see my people, I don't know if they're right. But actually, think about it from there. When you have a chat with someone, you can actually feel like you can have a much more personal, much more engaging dialogue than bam, 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 keyboard warrior, I hate you, you're a stupid company, I wish you never existed. Now, that's two ways that which companies can personalize. A third way is you can always use technology, and not in technology, but like these email platforms will allow you to personalize. Now, that in terms of adding a name in, I think is a step towards personalization. I feel like everyone knows that it isn't true personalization. It just, you've got a data set and you've put in something. Now, actually, that data set is basically just pulled out a first name and a last name. So, dear Ben Roberts. And the best ones is when they haven't got a first name or a last name for you, it says, and they haven't put it in a thing where it's like, dear insert first name Roberts. And it's like, that thing is, you have to be on top of some of those stuff. So actually a lot of it is that what we call, maybe another buzzword, micro segmentation, where actually that list, you break it down as much as possible and you make it highly relevant. Yes, it takes slightly more time. But actually, it's those micro moments, that micro segmentation, that actually means that people feel like this stuff is highly relevant. When you send a newsletter out to, say, 10,000 people, and it's the same newsletter to 10,000 people, do you think that those 10,000 people will have the exact same interest or the exact same opening? Actually, yeah, you may on the surface look like they're all interested in your company. But if you went and drilled that down a level, you've seen actually some of them were interested about service, sales, or some went on certain types of blogs. Certain people only opened actually the blogs, only opened the blogs and didn't read the rest of it. Now, why would you send them the full email letter when they're actually showing that they're not necessarily interested in that? So those are the micro segmentation, I think, is another great way that people, if they can spend the time, they will get less numbers, but they will have much more tangible results from it.
It's not a vanity metric, but it is that big number. You'd rather have 400 of something than you would 2 of something. But in reality, if you look at the actual ROI, then those 2 are probably the ones you want to. The other 398 will eventually come on board if they want to.
Exactly, but it's a real difficult balance, though, isn't it? Because I sort of put this out on a video earlier, talking about the vanity metrics. It said, us as marketers are doing the right thing by trying to cut down from these big numbers and cut away from these vanity metrics. But actually, people outside the industry, or even other people within business, actually address us as marketers, saying, "How many followers do you have? How many people have you got on your email list? Oh, why have you only emailed 1,000 of our list?" And trying to have some of these conversations with non-marketers actually means that maybe we should still care. Should we still care? Because the rest of the world still cares about these vanity metrics. Now, is it the world's fault for not knowing that these vanity metrics aren't the be-all and end-all, and they not necessarily knowing? Is it our fault for not explaining that it's right properly? And it's an interesting viewpoint, but us as marketers know that because someone has 100,000 followers doesn't mean they're any more influential, any more authoritative than someone with 1,000 followers, 100 followers, because again, they could have the same 100 followers as the other person, and actually those ones would buy your course, whereas someone or whatever you're selling, and the 100,000 may actually just retweet you a couple of times, but really they're not going to buy anything off you, or they're not going to, if you want to sell stuff and they don't buy off you, what's the point?
And that's almost the difference between good marketing or good marketers and bad marketers, and a lot of people struggle with that, where everybody always says, look from the consumer's point of view, look from your customer's point of view. But as a marketer, we can get so ingrained in looking at what we feel is right. And like you just said then, it's so easy to see it as a marketer, not as somebody that's looking to purchase, and that's where you start to get into trouble.
Yeah, exactly. It's a tough balance to get into, because we're in that mindset, because we're living it day in, day out, and we use the terminology, we use the buzzwords, we use the jargon because we're surrounded by it. We're alongside peers, and we talk with peers who are using the same language, but actually other people aren't using that same language. So how do we address that balance, and how do we teach people within our own organizations or within academia or whatever it is, that actually this is the way that things are going, and so we can actually try and bring things back closer together, and saying that it doesn't matter if you have 100,000 followers. That's not what it's about. It's about actually who's got that higher propensity to buy, who are you more engaged with. And again, in engagement, it's its own thing. But yeah, it's a rabbit hole that we can keep going down and down.
I think we are, yeah. Okay, on to the podcast then. And before we actually delve into marketing buzzword, I need to ask you, are you the kind of person that when they hear an acronym that they don't know, goes, hang on, what's that? Or are you the kind of person that sits there and goes, just note that down and look it up later, just keep nodding? To
be honest, I've done both. I'm a bit of both. And to be honest as well, actually, and this is actually I find really interesting when writing the book, I actually know that I do it differently depending on who says it. Because if it's someone that I know, like, and respect within the industry, and they start using a word that I've not heard before, I actually almost take it as, oh, that must be a thing. Because they're influential over me. They have an authority that I look up to. Whereas actually, if I heard Joe on the street said it, I'd be like, what on earth are you talking about? Now, and that's a really interesting point. So there's there's terms that I've heard over things. So like the human marketing, I first heard from a guy called Brian Kramer. And actually, I really respect the guy. And he came out with a book about it years ago, and it's suddenly now becoming a thing. It's amazing that. But that I respect straight away. And then you hear other things, I guess. I'm kind of trying to think other terms. So we've got like conversational commerce. Someone said that to me, and I was like, I don't know. I have no idea what that means. I heard from someone who I'd never heard of before. And they started talking about this conversational commerce thing. So then I had to do research into it. I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. But I hadn't heard of it before, so I wasn't sure what to make of it particularly.
Yeah, I've done both as well, and part of me is always shameful when I don't just say, "What's that?" Because if you don't know, just ask. The chances are someone sat right next to you does not know either. So and
that's the thing, especially at conferences. Some people are great at asking questions, but it's actually really easy to not be in that great category of asking questions. And everyone just sits there and they make all these notes, they scribble these notes down, they go, yeah. And everyone's looking at each other going, what did they just say? What does this mean? But then the best speakers will explain it. And it's like, this is what it is. And that's what I try and address in the book as well. It's actually, how do you define? That's what makes the difference, not just by using these words. Anyone can use a word. Not everyone can define it, add context to it, and actually help people and teach people what it means and how it works.
So why do you think there's a need specifically in marketing to debunk these buzzwords and also topics as well? Because it goes deeper than buzzwords.
Yeah, because things are changing so quickly. Buzzwords have always sort of been around because marketing is one of those industries that changes quite frequently. But more and more so, there are new things coming up all the time. There are new ways of working. At times, social media marketing was a buzzword. Content marketing was a buzzword. Email marketing, even direct marketing was a buzzword at one stage. And all these things have actually now been around for ages, and they've either been replaced, superseded, or just changed and adapted over time. So that's why we need to debunk things, because they change so quickly. And people come up with new stuff. And these new authoritative people say, I think this is an actual thing. I believe in it. And then it takes time to disseminate that information out. And it comes, especially when it appears, it's like a snowball effect, but it's like a real steep slope. So someone could say it, and within a matter of weeks, it's gospel. The term content marketing appeared out of nowhere. Like, we're not out of nowhere. It was obviously coined by a guy called Joe Polizzi from Content Marketing Institute out in the States. But it entered everyone's psyche so quickly, and people were scrambling around trying to understand, what did this content marketing thing mean? And it appears now people are scrambling around trying to understand what human marketing is, or humanization, or all these terms. But again, because it's so new, there isn't necessarily a set find it to try and help people understand what it actually is we're trying to get. And then maybe we come up with some standardized set of language over time. But there are a number of different words which could mean the same thing, and we have to find out which is going to come out on top. So influencer marketing is huge in the West, but actually in Asia, they don't use the term influencer marketing so much. They use the term KOLs, or key opinion leaders. And and this is the stuff that we're looking at, is actually different terms, different regions, different places, and people use different terms. So it's a crazy word, and that's why we need to keep debunking things, because people will hear this term key opinion leader and go, what's that? It's just influencer marketing, just with a different name. And that's why there's so many of these happening all the time. People talk more and more and share information more and more. So if we didn't debunk them, we completely lose track of what was going on in the world.
So this is where I cross-pollinate. There you go. There's another. Here's where I cross-pollinate two podcasts. On a recent episode, you spoke about snackable content. What's that?
So yeah, that was with an awesome woman called Julia McCoy out in the United States, and basically snackable content. There's people were saying about creating these like micro bits of content. So snackable, easily consumable stuff. So it's like 7-second videos. It's these little bits of stories where people could swipe through really quickly. This micro content that people could just go, bam, infographic, picture, whatever is, quote, gone. Now that in itself, some people say that's not a marketing strategy. That's ultimately the term. People started talking about it saying, oh, look, you're getting in people's faces quickly. You're not disturbing them too much. They'll remember you. But actually, as a strategy itself, it's not really too much of a thing. It's actually having a long form piece, a column of content, a central hub, whatever term you want to use, that's fine. But then all the snackable content is all these little bits that feed into it. So I guess my example is I could use my podcast, or you could use your podcast. You have your podcast as your central hub, your resource. And actually sharing quotes from the book, that's now sort of snackable content, because your podcast itself isn't necessarily snackable. It's a full meal, with my inverted commas that no one can see because it's not an audio podcast. But that's your full meal, and all these little snackable bits are bits that people can have little reminders of, what to share, get involved in. But actually, the hub, really, you need to focus on that big hub, and these snackable areas just feed back into this big meal. And that's where snackable content is really useful. What it's not useful is actually just creating loads of quotes, because people in a time could just post loads of quotes on Instagram and they suddenly got 100,000 followers or something ridiculous. The time's gone. Maybe someone will do it again, and maybe they will have success. I'm sure someone will tell me that, I posted loads of quotes and I'm now the most successful person on Instagram ever, top 100 influencer on Instagram. Great for you. But that's not really how snackable content should be used. There isn't a cases for and against everything, but that's in essence what snackable content is.
I think the time of quotes is slowly dying. I see quotes now, and it used to be you read them like, oh, right, yeah, that's something to live my life by. And then 10 seconds later, there's another one. Oh, no, that one I'm going to live my life by. And then by the third, you just, whatever, I'm just going to...
Where is it? There was a time, wasn't it, when you scrolled down Instagram and it was just motivational quote after motivational quote. Why? Because it was easy. That's what it was. It was easy. It was cheap likes and you could get thing. But actually, that's what, as marketers, we crave those vanity metrics still. And that's why, actually, do they still matter? Potentially, because people still want those vanity metrics. But yeah, ultimately, it doesn't mean anything. It's cheap likes. Now, if that's what you're after, then maybe that's the way to go. But it's not actually how you build a successful, content strategy or marketing strategy in the long run. Basing a marketing strategy around sharing quotes, I'd say it's got a few flaws to it.
Okay, so I'm going to have to mention one particular buzzword around marketing, and that's branding. I think a lot of people get this one massively, massively wrong. But what I actually want to know is it still important for businesses as well as on a personal level?
Oh, I think absolutely. I think the way it is changing. I think the way that personal branding is coming to the fore, again, more buzzwords in inverted commas. Personal branding has come to the fore, and actually the impact that personal branding now has on businesses itself is more important. Before, people went to work, they didn't have necessarily their own voice. They couldn't shout about everything that they were doing and what they felt about the company, or how the company made them feel, what their days were like. And actually now we're seeing how personal branding massively affects company branding, and companies are struggling with that because their people are part of your brand. And that's what the companies almost lose sight of. It's not like a brand isn't a logo. It's the logo, it's your offices, your premises, your people, every bit of literature you put out there, every social media post, the way which you design things, the way the look, the feel, I don't know, if you had food, you serve food there, it's the type of food you serve there. That's all part of your brand. And actually people then forget actually that real people element of it is almost its own thing, where a company can't really control very much. Now, on a personal level, it's actually from a brand level, how do brands help people build their personal brands so that actually it'll come back and benefit the business brand. Personal branding, again, it's everything you do, from the way you talk, the way you walk, the way you act, the stuff you share, the stuff you don't share. I think that's the thing as well. It's you don't have to share everything.
Please.
Please. And that all feeds into your personal brand. It's how people perceive you. And where they've never met you the first time. We're online. We met online. We haven't actually met in person. But I looked to what you're doing. I was like, oh, I really like what Peter's doing. And you chat with me, and hopefully you're the same sort of vibe.
Absolutely.
Don't feel free to lie.
No. Yeah. I should have just pretended that my mic was dead, shouldn't I?
But that's what it is, though, isn't it? That's personal branding. Even then, taking it offline, going to a networking event, a conference, the way you have a conversation with people, the way you dress. Are you dressed in joggers and a thing? Everywhere I go, I try and always wear a shirt. I don't have a tie on. I usually wear a little pullover or something, and I wear a pair of jeans. Smart casual. So people, it's like, actually, look, I'm not taking myself too seriously. I'm not stuck up, but maybe I think about this way too much. But for me, that's how I want people to remember me. And that's that is personal branding. And people need to remember, actually, that reflects on the company. The company reflects on the individuals as well, because people now want to be associated with brands that they can align their own values to. So branding is even more, I think, important now, because the world is so noisy and there are so many more touch points to go walking into a store. If you had a store before, you had a company before, and you were a storefront, it was easier to maintain that brand image. Now it's harder than ever, and actually it's potentially more important, because anyone can say anything about you online and you can't do jack about it.
The one thing that has become abundantly clear to me last year, as it's been quite a focus of mine, is the fact that social media, there's either people that think social media is this easy thing, and that makes life really easy, and that's why businesses succeed. And then there's other people that take it seriously and know how freaking hard it is, and even harder than ever, to stand out. And it's really interesting when those two people have a conversation, because they are just literally on two different planets.
But yeah, and that's, again, almost going back to the vanity metrics thing. People go, what do you do for a job? I do social media. Oh, that's fun. And the perception of this is so different to the reality. The perception of having 100,000 followers is so different to the reality of having 100,000 followers. And it's amazing. I actually love that example, because people don't understand, actually, social media. There are so many elements to it. There are so many nuances. There are so many reasons why people are on social media. And there are so much noise on there. Actually, you really have to work so hard in order to make any sort of dent or any sort of impact, because everyone's talking, everyone's sharing, and it's so easy to become more isolated, actually, than you've ever have been before.
And on that note, are you ready for some quick fire questions?
Oh God, yeah. Okay, go on, hit me, Peter. Hit me.
Name one must-read business book.
Known by Mark Schaefer.
What was the last thing you Googled?
What did I Google? I actually Googled all the different types of bees, actually.
Why would you do that?
Well, no, because I was thinking about, I was like, hang on, because people keep asking me about this, and I had a feeling that you were going to ask a load of questions about bees, and I was like, hang on, I just want to make sure that a carpenter bee is an actual type of bee, and it wasn't one that was just called a bee. But when things are called something that they aren't actually quite it, and I was like, carpenter bee is definitely a bee, isn't it? So I was Googling to make sure that it was an actual type of bee, and not something that was like I don't know, that was like a fly that they just called a bee. So
what people can't see, because this is just audio, is that in the background, all Ben's got is all these charts and photos and things of bees, because he thought this whole thing was going to be about bees. He's made all this up on the spot.
The funny thing is that I don't know if you can actually see, there is actually
stuff.
I've got a little toy bee and everything. So if you could just see little things in the back of my head making jokes, and actually, look, there is, seriously, I've got posters, I've got a little toy bee and everything. I'm taking this whole personal branding thing seriously.
Wow. Moving on. What is your most used app at the moment?
Ooh, it's actually become something called Mattermost.
Okay, what is that?
So Mattermost is basically like Slack. Okay. So it's a company communication system that we're now using in work. And basically, it's like Slack, but it's a little bit more dev orientated. So it has a load of different channels there, because we use Git to sort of measure all sort of different repos and pushing different things to our software. So there's a lot of stuff. It's pretty much like Slack if we want to use it as a marketer would normally market it, and it integrates with all stuff, but actually it has a lot more developer functionality. So just chatting a lot on there. So that's probably the app I'm using at the most at the moment.
Excellent. What is your favorite theory, concept, or methodology?
Ooh. I quite like, at the moment, I think on Timely, I can go with Pest. I think it's really nice. I think at the moment, I think theory and methodology doesn't always have its place. But with the whole Brexit thing, I think actually people do really need to start actually examining the political, economic, social, and technological changes that are happening, because technology is changing so much. The political scene is completely up and down, and actually, if you can get any of that right, and the social change is incredible, I think actually that's a theory actually I think that is really important right now.
What would be your one tip for people who are studying at the moment?
Ooh. speak to people who are actually going out there and doing it. Spend some time going out and finding out what the real world is. And as I say that, I don't mean that in a academia is completely devolved of real world business, but it's understanding actually what you can take from real business and put back into your studies. And you can't speak to enough people, no matter whether you're working in business now and you're studying for a CIM degree, whether you're actually full university and studying an CIM what am I looking for? What's the word I'm looking for, Pete?
Qualification module?
Yeah. Anything like that is actually speaking to as many people as possible and working out the different elements and actually how they fit together. So this is the theory. Okay, how is that practically used? That's, I think for me, that's the biggest thing. So I did my degree part-time and that helped me incredibly.
And finally, what's the one buzzword that really grinds your gears?
Oof. Authenticity is grinding my gears at the moment. Why? Because people don't know. Authenticity is such, it doesn't actually mean anything. This is one of those buzzwords that you're authentic. What? Because you post a live video of you walking down the street, that makes you more authentic than someone who spent half an hour creating a video that's a bit more of a masterpiece. That does not make you more authentic. Because you have more ums and ahs and you haven't edited it, that does not make you more authentic. You're recording in your pajamas, doesn't make you more authentic. It's a word that it's driving me a bit crazy at the moment, because what is authenticity? It doesn't actually mean anything.
So Ben, if people want to find out more about Talkative or potentially subscribe maybe to the Marketing Buzzword podcast or even get in touch with yourself, what do they need to do?
Talkative.uk. That would be the place to look for also Talkative. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Ben M. Roberts, because there are too many damn Ben Robertses in the world. So personal brand, I've got to put the M in there. So Ben M. Roberts, and you can basically find this. I've got and just type in the Marketing Buzzword podcast on any of your good podcast listening apps. So Ben M. Roberts, Marketing Buzzword podcast, any of those two, type them in somewhere, and you'll find me.
So Ben M. Roberts, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you today. Thank you so much.
Oh, Peter, the pleasure was all mine. Thank you so much.
Thanks again, Ben, for that chat. What are my main takeaways from that conversation I had with Ben M. Roberts? Well, the first one is that building a rapport and a personal relationship with your customers can provide a better service. By assisting and helping customers either face-to-face, via messaging, or over the phone, it can break down the barriers that some platforms that we've created due to updated and new technology have put up, and helps us stop the keyboard warriors. You can personalise B2B communications as well as B2C. Take an app like Bonjoro. The link's in the show notes, by the way. This can provide everyone, even at an exhibition, with a personalised video message. Remember, the small things do add up. Break your data down and make your content highly personalised and highly relevant to each individual client. And finally, ever heard of snackable content? Well, a past guest on this show, Julia McCoy, discussed it with Ben on one of his latest podcasts, which you can find on any reputable podcast sourcing platform, Marketing Buzzwords. Snackable content can be valuable content that has been sliced and diced from a longer piece of content. Take this podcast, for example. I could share a quote from the chat I've had with Ben, but it must be a quote that is interesting and engaging. Where snackable content doesn't work is when no thought is put into it. As it's such a small piece of content, it needs that intricacy. But isn't this true of everything? Make it relevant, interesting, and engaging. Always. And finally on this episode, I want to touch upon McKinsey's consumer decision journey as a model, because I don't think it gets the recognition it deserves. It's a break from the traditional marketing or sales funnel model. Instead of looking at the different stages of a purchasing decision, which is linear, step by step, and placed in a methodical order, where marketing touch points are used to guide and influence consumers to the one and only decision, a purchase, this model takes a slightly recyclable type of method. The funnel, it's no longer sufficient to replicate the mountain of information and choices that are available to any one consumer. We now live in a marketing world where there is always 2 ways of communication and 3 parties are now involved in any purchase decision: the buyer, the seller, and the opinions of others, which we strongly forget in a digital age. Think comparison sites, where it used to be the influence of others and word of mouth was the best form of marketing, and it still is, but comparison sites have taken this to a new level. When was the last time you made a purchase without looking to see how many stars were involved? In the McKinsey's consumer decision journey, it is said that the process is now a circular journey with 4 different phases: initial consideration, active evaluation, which means researching potential purchases, closure, when consumers buy a brand, and then post-purchase, when consumers experience them. The main difference here is that consumers now make the conscious decision to potentially add more options and more brands into the mix while still looking to make that final decision. Post their initial consideration, now that is the key difference. As marketers, we should now focus our efforts on reaching customers at the moment that is most influential on their purchases. Ultimately, it is all about being in the right place at the right time, showing up, providing the information they need, showing up, to make the right decisions, showing up at the right time. Now, more information on this model can be found using the link in the show notes, so please check it out as it's a brilliant model to use. Thank you so much for joining us today on Marketing Study Lab. It really means the world that you're listening to this out there, and hopefully I've provided you some value. If you're looking to know more about what Marketing Study Lab does and is about, go to marketingstudylab.co.uk or get in touch with me personally, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or feel free to email me at peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk. Happy marketing.